fire, soldier!
Did you know that in the original Battlefield Bad Company, there's technically nothing stopping you from spawning on your squad mates and shotgunning them to death, repeatedly, without consequence? Did you know there's also technically nothing stopping you from going to someone's house and... In one match I played for this video, I discovered someone literally posted up with 2 Xboxes, 2 gamer tags, and sabotaging both teams for his amusement. In Conquest games, trolls from both teams form alliances, purposely keeping all the flags neutral so that no one can spawn, and team killing anyone who tries to play the game as intended. Did I mention that this all happened in ranked lobbies? Look, Battlefield has always had these problems, but if you encountered vapid little shits like MLG Hobo Joe here back in 2008, you could simply back out and find another lobby. With a player count in the low teens, that's no longer an option. Less than a month after this video's publication, Battlefield Bad Company's master servers will be shut down permanently. But, let's face it, it's already unplayable and it has been for a long time. Which begs the question, how much of this franchise can still be played as intended? And with EA shuttering 3 of these games in December of 2023, what can be done to ensure that they, and the rest of the series, remain playable for years to come? Back in June, I set out to chronicle the current state of every game in the Battlefield series, starting with Bad Company and ending with Battlefield 5. Today, after 5 months of alternating hard work and existential crises, I present to you my findings. This is the story of Battlefield's disappearing legacy. It'd be a shame to leave this first game on such a profoundly negative note, so I should stress that there are already projects underway replacing master servers for the PS3 versions of both Bad Company games. They're not ready for the masses yet, but judging by other PS3 revival projects I've played, this will be by far the easiest way to play a Bad Company online after its official demise. It will then be on the community, that means you, to populate these new servers, organize game nights, and not be assholes. But what's important for our purposes today is knowing that even with Bad Company's servers closing, its curtains won't be. Battlefield 1943 is an oft-forgotten nugget of the franchise's history because not only is it exclusive to console, it was also digital exclusive. That wasn't necessarily a bad thing at the time. At $15 in 2009, 1943 was a very attractive little multiplayer shooter, using technology and assets from Bad Company to offer new content in the form of World War II's Pacific Front. 1943's engine was a middle ground between Bad Company 1 and 2, though from my perspective, it feels far more like the former. In truth, 1943 is more of a standalone expansion to Bad Company than its own game. Suffice it to say that were this game framerate boosted on modern Xboxes or ported to PlayStation 4 and onwards, it would have plenty of life left. Alongside modern Battlefield offerings, 1943 stands out because its arcadey systems and smaller maps offer a distinct experience that the series has since shied away from in favor of large-scale warfare. Lessons learned from Bad Company's development and release are on display in 1943, especially when it comes to anti-troll measures. Spawn killing is significantly harder, and ranked matches no longer have friendly fire. 1943 is thus much more playable than the game it's based on, simply because individual players are no longer given free rein to spoil the fun. Consequently, 1943 retains a more active player base than Bad Company. It's still a niche of a niche, but the average match quality is significantly higher. Which, to me, makes it all the more upsetting that EA is pulling the plug. When Battlefield 1943 shuts down, it's gone. There's no PC port, there's no split screen, no campaign. Online multiplayer was literally all this game had. And it's not even like Bad Company where there are significant, practically unsolvable problems that would cost undue time and money to patch. Battlefield 1943 is a competent, populated, and completely functional game. All it needs is to continue existing. And for a community this size, that would cost EA, frankly, it would cost them fucking nothing. A single hour of FIFA point revenue would fund 1943's server upkeep until the cows come home. So, why are they pulling the plug? How much money could one of the biggest entertainment companies in the world possibly be saving by turning off the singular master server keeping this game in existence? Decisions like this are a gigantic middle finger to every single person who worked on, bought, and loved these games. If EA really can't be fucked to maintain a server for these games, they need to release hosting tools to the public so that fans can easily and legally host replacements. It's gonna happen one day anyway, when the right sort of nerd reverse engineers it. So just save them the trouble and win some brownie points while you're at it. Starting with Bad Company 2 and continuing on through the end of the Xbox 360 and PS3 lifespan, Battlefield games essentially exist in two separate forms: the technically superior, larger scale PC version, and a slightly scaled back experience for consoles. The 7th gen versions of each Battlefield past this point all share a common cap of 24 players per match. Bad Company 2's conquest objectives were designed with this limitation in mind, unlike Battlefield 3 Onward where the maps were simply cropped from 5 flags down to 3. The 360 and PS3 versions of Bad Company 2 are framey messes with weird aiming controls and no custom servers. However, the 24-player gameplay of the console versions is quite different from what you'll find on PC in ways that mean the performance and control disadvantages don't really matter. Parsing the map and understanding what your team needs and where they need it is much easier when there are only 23 other players to keep track of. Unfortunately, it's more or less impossible to find a full match of Bad Company 2 these days on either console. The game has been delisted, it has login issues on PS3, and honestly, I don't blame anyone who's turned off by the performance issues. It just kinda sucks that this particular flavor of Bad Company 2 has more or less died out with time. Smaller servers exist on PC, but they're the exception rather than the rule. The vast majority of players choose their servers by opening the browser, sorting by player count, and joining the most populated server that isn't full. That has always been true, but it's especially true now that there are 1, maybe 2 populated games at a time. So, as a result, map and game mode selection suffers greatly. Rush servers are rarely populated, and those who dislike higher player counts are shit out of luck for conquest. Now and then I'll get lucky and find a server sitting around the 32-player sweet spot, but when it fills up or dies out, the other options are universally worse than what I was just playing. The frustrating thing is that this player base could be having appropriately scaled matches of much higher quality, with lower pings and without the need for balance-altering mods, but instead they choose to huddle everyone into a not quite full server playing Conquest large. And more often than not, ticket pools are set unreasonably high, ensuring matches last for absurd durations. You want to play BC2, but the only game just loaded your least favorite map? Just go do something else for an hour and hope everyone votes for something better next time. Look, I get it, people want to relive their childhoods. Trouble is, in the current state of this game's community, I'm not sure anyone is getting what they want. Fans of 64-player servers are getting 40-player matches with high ping. Those who enjoy smaller games have no choice but to play marathon-length matches with thousands of tickets. Ultimately, player count is the problem, but that's only natural for a game that's now older than its target audience was when it came out. There are already a couple different ways to play Bad Company 2 via unofficial means, and they even take the liberty of providing the Vietnam DLC for free. The onus is now on the community to organize itself in a way that allows Bad Company 2 to thrive as it continues to age. And with just a few weeks left on the EA death clock, every single person has a chance to leave their mark on the game's future. A few weeks ago, my girlfriend had fallen asleep with her legs across my lap. Letting her sleep, I stayed up late and played Battlefield 3, telling myself I needed footage for this video, but really knowing deep down that I mostly just wanted to play Battlefield 3. Upon loading into my second match of the session, I found myself in a squad with multiple people actively using their microphones. On Xbox Live, on the 360. And they weren't just chit-chatting, they were making serious callouts and attempting to coordinate our victory.
Fuck, I was all fucked up when I came back to life. I don't know where I was.
Let's get out of spawn trap and eventually me and Alien will crash.
I am not kidding when I say this was the first time I've ever enjoyed Conquest on Metro. Being girlfriend locked meant I couldn't plug in a mic and pitch in, but our squad leader was actually commanding us as a squad. He was issuing orders by name, and of course we complied.
Boss Mike, no one went in the front door?
Nope.
Good. Me and Alien 1 completely in ATM. Good.
We won the shit out of that game. These guys owned. I added the squad lead and we play together whenever we see each other online. Pongzi, I hope you see this, and thank you for letting me experience this game again the way I did half my life ago. Unlike Bad Company 2, BF3's console community is still going pretty goddamn strong all things considered, especially on Xbox, thanks to backwards compatibility and its inclusion in Game Pass. For all the port's shortcomings, playing BF3 on console feels, at its finest moments, like time travel. And I hope I never have to let it go. Ah, fuck. Battlefield 3's console versions offer user-moderated dedicated servers, which are rented via the Xbox Live and PSN marketplace. With Microsoft's decision to shutter the Xbox 360 storefront next year, it's unclear what will happen to these communities on Xbox. Sony walked back their decision to close the PS3 store a few years back, but it's only a matter of time until they follow suit too. For series outsiders, or even those who just play on PC, I understand why the demise of console BF3 might not seem like much of a loss, but even ignoring that this is the version that millions experienced and are likely to be nostalgic for, it's also one of the easiest ways to get an authentic Battlefield 3 experience these days. Of course, the most popular servers are predictable, repetitive nostalgia fodder. Humanity could perish in a nuclear holocaust, and there would still be a bunch of Russians in a bunker somewhere playing 5,000 Ticket Conquest on Metro. There's also usually a too-long match of TDM on Nashar going on, but the remaining servers tend to rotate at least a few maps, and their owners don't seem to worry themselves too much with changing the meta or banning certain weapons and strategies. Between the imprecision of gamepads, sub-30 frame rate, and 24-player limit, console BF3 is basically a different game from on PC. So, while the game may be technically superior on PC, I will be sad to see the console version go when the time comes. Anyways, fuck Battlelog. For the lucky few here that won't be acquainted, Battlelog is a relic from the era when people actually thought Facebook would be the future of the internet. It's a gaming social network. Literally anything you do in BF3, even launching the single-player campaign, must be initiated through the Battlelog website. There is no in-game server browser. There isn't even a main menu. You click on what you want on the website, and it loads the game directly from your browser. I just want to take a moment here to remind everyone there's an in-game server browser on the console version of Battlefield 3, but not on PC. Probably the most noticeable issue nowadays is what I believe to be intentionally faked player counts. If you run one of these servers and I'm wrong, feel free to correct me, but you're gonna have to provide some proof, because I'm not gonna believe you unless you do. What I think is going on is that server owners stuff the lobby full of fake users to trick Battlelog into putting them at the top of the server list. You can join a server that says it has 50 or 60 players and find yourself completely alone. There's usually a quick and easy way to spot these before you join. Anytime I go to join a server, I click the Show Players button in Battlelog, and every player listed as unknown is fake. That's the thing though, not everyone's gonna think to look here, and unfortunately when dealing with dead games, especially those meant for several dozen players, the lowest common denominator does matter. Curious and casually nostalgic players will get frustrated after their second or third empty server and just give up on the game altogether. And that's not speculation, I've seen it happen multiple times. If you're willing to put in the work, there are still plenty of populated and thriving servers, but you're gonna have to play them when they're populated, including joining in when there are only a few online so as to boost it in the server list. And as an American, that means playing at really weird hours. And that is to say, you should completely abandon any expectation of playing on the most populated American servers. They basically only play Conquest Large on base game maps. The two best servers I've found are both based in Russia. These servers are my favorite because they run map votes that include DLC maps in every mode in the game. These are basically the only way to experience DLC content as originally intended, and to be clear, you should play Battlefield 3's DLC. Most of it is really fucking good, but even the mediocre stuff is worthwhile, because playing Karg, Firestorm, Metro, Nashar, and fucking Caspian on repeat is boring, especially when half of the servers have ticket limits far too high for their player count. Yeah, an Abandoned Flats might be the worst rush map in the game, but I've not played it 6 trillion times, so I'll take that any day of the week. I'll save discussing all of the expansions in detail for the inevitable retrospective, but I can't stress enough how essential I consider them to the Battlefield 3 experience. As it stands, Battlefield 3's PC version is not at immediate risk of becoming unplayable, but Battlelog is getting jankier by the day, and it's only a matter of time before something breaks and EA decides to sunset it. As with Bad Company 2, there are alternative master servers available, and I actually have quite a bit to say about them. But before I delve into that, I have to cover my ass real quick. I have something of a professional relationship with Electronic Arts. I'm not an employee or anything, but because I don't want to step on toes, and because I like the amount of money they occasionally deposit into my bank account, I reached out to one of my contacts and asked for guidance as to what would and wouldn't get me in trouble here. So basically, all the unofficial server solutions for these games use reverse-engineered master servers and account systems, and per my point of contact's advice, I'll have to play it safe and refrain from naming or linking to any of the multiplayer services shown in this video. Information about these services is readily available with a negligible amount of work, so this shouldn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But I am advised that I should stress that you are obliged to use legal copies of the Battlefield game should you choose to access these services, especially if the game is still being sold.
The Battlefield series goes on very deep discount on Steam during every major sale, like premium editions for $10 a piece, and they're also available in EA Play and Game Pass, so there's a pretty good chance you already have access to legal copies of these anyways.
Got it? Good. So the first of these aftermarket Battlefield 3 clients brings the game out of the early 2010s with an in-game server browser, mod support, bot support, and performance fixes. It looks sharp and it plays well. This is the sort of mod I really was hoping existed for this game before I started looking into it for this video. But there's just an itsy-bitsy tiny little problem. Nobody plays it! This is in no way a slight on this mod's developers or community. I'm so glad something like this exists, and I really hope a day comes when I can enjoy BF3 via this method, but as it stands, I have never seen more than 4 people on a server at one time. I consulted the official Discord where I was told this is normal and that players only really congregate on Saturdays, when a UK-based clan holds events. So, to do my due diligence, I took time off work to attend that event for this video, and there weren't enough people in attendance to fill out 2 squads per team. For transparency, that was months before this video went live, so there's a chance the community has grown since, but as far as I'm concerned, the only reason to touch this client right now is for developing and playing more complex mods than the other one can allow. And out of the 2 I'm aware of, it's by far the more polished and versatile experience, not to mention far less likely to be sued out of existence. That is to say, this other service is InLegal. It's a client that supports Battlefield Bad Company 2 through Hardline, as well as Medal of Honor Warfighter, among a lot of other things. If you're wondering why this service seems to offer so much more than the others, well, there's one great motivator in gaming that leads people to do what others deem impossible. Once again, I buy all my games, and you should too. The Battlefield games are available in Game Pass and EA Play, so there's no real reason to go through the trouble of stealing them. It's also significantly easier and less risky to obtain things legitimately. However, I think it says a lot about the state of the games industry that pirates have better ensured the continued function of old AAA games than the companies who made them. Both of these mods combined have given me fewer headaches than Battlelog, and neither actually requires a legitimate copy of the game. The match quality on the one that's actually populated is far better than what you'll find on most official servers. Almost every server on this client has the same map vote plugin as my favorite Battlelog servers, and given that most people you'll encounter here have sailed the 7 seas, the community isn't divided by who does and doesn't own the DLC anymore. Most of these servers are located in Russia, but there are some decent South American communities too, so no matter what side of the globe you're on, you'll get at least serviceable ping. Now, this all sounds great, but there is one big ol' asterisk that I would be remiss not to talk about, and I can't go too far into it without naming the program, but basically the creator of this mod allegedly used to threaten to wipe the hard drive of anyone who cheated on his service. I can't verify or dispel the credibility of those threats, but the developer claims that the tools that would have let him do that have long since been patched out of the client, so whether or not you believe him is up to you. I personally don't think some dude who got tired of playing against cheaters has any motive to fuck with my hard drive, and I don't really see it as any more dangerous than giving Tencent kernel-level 24/7 access to your PC. Yeah, no, in fact, I think the latter is much, much worse. At the end of the day, this is like any other less-than-official software. You're using it at your own risk, and if you're not an idiot, you're probably gonna be fine. These 3 methods of playing the game are best used in conjunction with each other. If your usual stomping ground isn't busy right now, see if the other services have anything going on. That is to say, BF3 is in a pretty good place right now. The official servers are still plenty playable if you're willing to put the work in, and multiple alternatives exist that allow better and more specific experiences if that's what you're after.
Aim. Fire. Frank, no leisurely stroll from the clubhouse to the first tee like most golf courses. Here we go, from an aircraft carrier on the first tee.
Yeah, it's a scary little sight trying to take off there on that opening.
Did you know that the modern PGA Tour games run on Frostbite? Or that in the Rory McIlroy PGA Tour game, you could unlock the Battlefield 4 map Parasol Storm as a playable 18-hole golf course. There's even professional commentary on par with the rest of the courses in the game.
Like this.
Rich, we've picked a perfect day. It's usually here about 64 people running around, battling it out for domination.
On the green.
I didn't find out about this on purpose, I just so happened to be on a golf game kick when I started working on this video, but I had a really great time unlocking Battlefield content and then playing through it.
I've not quite figured out how to putt in this one yet, without the guide.
You just tap it in.
For those watching on the video in like a week,
Yeah.
I just made the Ben Affleck smoking face.
Yeah.
If you want to see the best moments of that, let me know and I'll upload the highlights. If people seem to like it, well, God knows there's more heckling where this came from.
Casey. Casey. Just tap
What? I don't golf!
The actual Battlefield 4 section of this video is going to be pretty brief because there ain't much wrong with it. Battlefield 4 is also intertwined in the smelly disaster that is Battlelog, but engaging with it is mostly optional. Battlefield 4 saw the return of the in-game server browser, and most of Battlelog's features are integrated into the menus rather than being trapped in a web page. BF4 is plenty populated on both console and PC, and in the latter case, the most active servers all feature map voting and DLC. The only real catch is that the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 versions are borderline non-functional. They're somewhat active, but God, I'm sorry to employ the gamer cliche here. God, how the fuck did DICE get away with releasing a game in this state? Players randomly appear as nothing but floating guns, and it's not a cheat, it just kinda happens to everyone at random. If you're in a fight and run out of ammo, or you want to grab a launcher or something, don't bother picking up someone else's kit. Just put your controller down, accept your fate, because it's going to take like 10 to 15 seconds for the gun you've picked up to load before you can use it. You're just kind of sitting there, helpless. I don't think I gotta say this, but don't try and play this game on 7th gen systems. Now, I was in the camp that didn't really care for Battlefield Hardline when it came out, but in retrospect, this game has some cool stuff going for it. Classic game types are given a shot in the arm via the new theme and loadout system, and the objective modes on offer are a breath of fresh air after playing 5 games worth of Conquest and Rush. Blood Money is a competitive bank robbery mode where even the cops are trying to make off with the cash. My favorite mode in the game is Hotwire. Think Conquest, but instead of capturing stationary flags, you're driving one of 5 marked vehicles as fast as you can to rack up points, while the enemy tries to kill you and take the vehicle to do the same. It's like Oddball at 100 miles per hour, and with the right amount of players, it's absolutely brilliant. But therein lies the problem. Hardline has its fans, and it has done a little better since the Steam release came along, but it is still one of the least populated games in the franchise, and I'm not really sure what— oh, for fuck— surprise, motherfuckers! Battlelog is back and even less functional than it's ever been! It doesn't matter how much you've played Battlefield 3 or 4, BF Hardline's server browser defaults to an incredibly strict North American region filter. Unless you knew to check in on the advanced filter settings before you started looking for a game, Hardline appears to be completely dead. And since it's not a mainline entry, I don't blame anyone who doesn't question that and just uninstalls without playing a single match. Untick the hidden region filter and there will be a few thriving communities playing Hardline. Most of them are vanilla, but a few of them rotate DLC in on the weekends, and send people the right direction for cheap premium keys if they don't already have it, which is God's work, by the way. Hardline is functional on all levels except for being bound to this piece of shit website, and I'd encourage everyone to try it out for themselves if they want a new take on the military shooter genre. The PS3 version is kinda sorta active, but on 360 I've yet to find a single game in over 2 months of sporadic attempts. I have to imagine that the next time EA thins their herd of servers, Hardline's probably on its way to the chopping block. And while the same alternative server option from BF3 and 4 also supports Hardline, I somehow doubt that the population is headed anywhere other than down for the foreseeable future. All things considered, Battlefield 1 is in a pretty alright place in terms of preservation. As is Battlefield tradition, BF1 launched as a mess and grew into a popular, well-regarded part of the franchise. After Hardline's divisive new direction, Battlefield 1 was simultaneously returned to form and a shot in the arm. The traditional Battlefield formula spiced up with an experimental setting that, in the grand scheme of things, hadn't yet been meaningfully explored by other shooters. Not that BF1 is a shining example of a historical war game, it's kinda just a World War II shooter where the guns are worse, and honestly I don't really care for it. Besides, I like my Battlefield games to tonally accentuate my new metal playlist, but you'll be happy to know that it's more or less wholly functional. Admittedly, I spent less time with this one than any other game covered in the video, but I did play a solid few hours, and I experienced no issues to speak of. So if this is your favorite game in the series, I'm sorry to glaze over it, but I believe you'll be able to enjoy it for years to come without complication. When I set out to make this video, I wasn't going to discuss Battlefield 5 at all. I tried the game back in 2020 and generally enjoyed myself. Mind you, not enough to actually continue playing on a regular basis. BF5 is a fine shooter. It's not so much a good World War II game, and I should make clear I'm not one of those gamer snowflakes complaining about historical accuracy, because you can play as a woman in a game where you can wield a red dot-sighted MP40 as a fucking British medic. A better summation of my feelings about Battlefield 5 as a piece of World War II media is that it presents a symmetrical take on an extremely asymmetrical conflict. But that's for another time. There's a more pressing question at hand. In a video primarily concerned with discussing the preservation of games approaching 10 or even 20 years old, why have I decided to discuss a game that hasn't even celebrated its 5th birthday? Take your fucking pick! Battlefield 5 is available via EA Play, Xbox Game Pass, and was given away free to PS Plus subscribers back in 2021. It goes on sale digitally for less than $10, and physical copies can be had for the price of a hot and ready. Even though Battlefield 5 came to Steam nearly 2 years after its initial release via Origin, meaning the vast majority of early adopters and wait-for-it sailors aren't included in these numbers, the Steam version averages between 7 and 10,000 concurrent players every month. It peaks around 20,000, even higher during sales. Those are healthy numbers for a game this old, with reception this middling, that has already been replaced by a successor. How could this game possibly be suffering from issues even remotely comparable to those of Battlefield Bad Company 2, a delisted game from over a decade ago that, depending on platform, has been varying degrees of broken for more than half of that duration? I mean, 20,000 players is a lot of people. So where are they? Don't worry, I found them eventually, but let me first expose the first strike against BF5's longevity. For the life of me, I cannot comprehend how DICE have continually managed to consistently design the worst server browsers in the industry since, like, 2011. Battlelog was fucking garbage. It literally made me think 0 people on Earth were playing Battlefield Hardline for multiple years, but even that piece of shit pales in comparison to Battlefield 5's multiplayer match-finding UI. Upon returning to Battlefield 5 for the purposes of this video, there was a double-digit number of minutes, beginning with 2 if you can believe it, where I did not think I'd be able to get enough multiplayer footage to even cover it. I would occasionally find a populated server or two, but mostly I found pages upon pages of empty servers. Now, for those who've been waving your arms and swearing at your screen about these gigantic quick play buttons, relax, I'm getting there, and I'll explain exactly why those buttons don't work in a minute. But first, I think that it's important to stress that as a longtime PC first-person shooter fan, my instinct is and always will be to click server browser first. Every time I open a game. I'm not leaving whether or not I have a good or bad time up to an algorithm. If I wanted to do that, I'd make YouTube videos. Playlists are really bad for preservation in general because they split up the community and make it harder to understand who's playing what at any given time. Doubly so when the default mode is for some inexplicable reason split into 2 separate playlists with different map selections. But here's the thing, Mr. Arm Flaily Man. I did use one of these buttons. I'd heard that DICE added specific maps to the game, so when I selected currently trending playlist Pacific Front, you can imagine my surprise when I found myself in a completely empty lobby. So that's strike 2. Even when I used the buttons for the popular modes, and to remind you, this was after spending 20 minutes browsing for servers and waiting for the Pacific Front button to load me into an empty game, I was put into a server that wasn't even half full. And that prompted the exact response you'd expect. Are there only 20 people in the world playing this game right now? Now, obviously that's not the case. It's simply a result of bad luck intermingling with the game's terrible UI, but that's still strike number 3. When the matchmaking does work, it's still suboptimal. All but the most stubborn individuals would take these 3 things at face value and assume that BF5 is dead. Look, the average person who plays multiplayer shooters is not going to respond to this or this by checking Steam charts or fucking with the filter for half an hour. And unfortunately, somehow, that's not the biggest problem facing Battlefield 5 at present. I reinstalled this game because when I told friends I was planning on excluding it, several of them informed me that Battlefield 5 is absolutely full of cheaters these days. And I don't mean that there's some really good players at the bottom half of your team accuses of cheating, that's normal. I mean that within half an hour of starting to play the game, I encountered a player who was repeatedly killing every single player in the server on both teams via console commands, and spamming in chat to claim responsibility. This problem is prevalent enough that big Battlefield YouTubers have talked about it, and it's through one of those videos that I found out that these cheaters can actually access IP addresses for all the players in the lobby, even though those are official EA-hosted dedicated servers. This indicates that they're able to access the server's Archon, so God knows what else they'll figure out how to do. It's not unheard of for old shooters with poorly maintained online infrastructure to have security holes up to and including remote access tools, or the ability to trigger anti-cheat bans on other players. So I really can't recommend reinstalling this one right now. So far, the cheaters aren't appearing on console, and I'd hazard a guess that player population is higher since the game is so cheap and available in so many subscription services. But I do sincerely hope that EA finds a way to curb these issues on PC sooner rather than later, because Battlefield 5 really benefits from keyboard and mouse. It looks absolutely gorgeous running at high frame rates and resolutions, and I met and befriended some really cool folks during my time with it, so it would be a really big shame for the best version of this game to die out because of script kiddies. Originally, I was going to cover Battlefield 2042 and speculate on its future, and that of the Battlefield franchise at large. But writing that segment quickly devolved into a starry-eyed anti-capitalist rant, which I will spare you, at least for today. But suffice all of this to say that corporate greed is the #1 enemy of preservation, of artists, and of art itself. Battlefield may have never reached the same commercial or cultural heights as a certain peer, but there was a time where the franchise was undeniably among the most important forces in the genre. Battlefield pushed the envelope in an era where Call of Duty was criticized for stagnating. It informed bits and pieces of design in modern AAA and indie games alike. And while the brand is hardly in tip-top shape nowadays, there are still millions of people who cherished what came before, and they deserve the joy of reliving the nostalgic memories of these games the way I did while making this video. Whether it's Battlefield, Need for Speed, or Blacklight Tango Down, it is on people like you and me to save the multiplayer media we care about while we still can. Whether that means reverse engineering network infrastructure, organizing and moderating communities, writing user guides, spreading the word to the masses, or simply showing up and playing an old favorite, we all have the power to do our part to save the games we love.